my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Infinite on Paramount Plus? Stick around and find out. Does the Matrix have like a... That's like the orchestral thing that's going on in the Matrix. I'm trying to think if it has a theme. Like the lobby thing? I don't know. What should I be singing? What part of the movie should I be pulling from if I'm going to sing a Matrix theme? Anyway. Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Play Productions. This is my uncut review of Infinite on Paramount Plus. The synopsis on IMDb reads, a sci-fi action adaptation that examines the concept of reincarnation through remarkable visuals and well-established characters who need to use their memories and past learnt skills to ensure the future is protected from infinites that seek to end all life on the planet. That was, I think, a user-submitted synopsis. The one that's actually on the site was much more simplistic, but maybe more accurate, I think. Let's see. A man discovers that his hallucinations are actually visions from past lives. So, yeah, short and sweet. But anyway... They're really going for the Matrix here, I think. You got cool characters wearing stylized clothes that are able to do supernatural levels of melee and gunfighting stunts. The main character needs to have a fundamental yet secret nature of the world revealed to him so that he can kind of wake up and take up the mantle as the greatest hero in the hidden war for the fate of all humanity. I mean, it's the more I watch this movie, the more I was like, whoa, they're like shamelessly going for the Matrix here, you know? The main character is played by Mark Wahlberg. He has to gain knowledge of his abilities through a little bit of a training thing at the beginning, or near the beginning, and he has at least one key realization moment where he comes into his full power, or close to his full power. The characters are not layered or complex in their motivations. The danger also doesn't feel real to me in the fight scenes, which was also, I think, true much of the time in the Matrix movies. It was just more about the style of seeing how those scenes played out, you know. Repeatedly, there are details that felt missing to me in scenes that would make scenes not make sense. I mean, there's one scene where, I'll try to be vague about this, but one character is interacting with another character that he's just met. And the character A is interacting with character B. And character B, this new character that A hasn't met yet, is kind of doing some things that make him seem antagonistic, but by the end of that scene, he's shown to not really have been a threat during their exchange. And at the same time, at the end of the scene, character C comes into the scene very suddenly, guns blazing, and Wahlberg is like, what the crap? And a gun gets fired at him and actually breaks loose the handcuffs that he had on. But in his mind, there's no reason to think that was done skillfully and on purpose. It could have just been an accident. He's putting his hands up, and this strange new person that hasn't said a word but comes out and fires a machine gun at him, maybe inadvertently breaks off his handcuffs. Then character C says, get in, because they have a car with them. Get in. So what does the A character do? He gets in the car with this brand new person that he knows nothing about, except they just fired like an Uzi at him. And probably, since character A hasn't seen crazy kung fu before, okay, I'm talking about Mark Wahlberg, sorry. I try to be vague. Anyway, I'm just like, why is he going with that character? If anything, the character he was just talking to showed that actually they were not the threat that they may have come across as during that scene. But instead, he's going with this character who burst through the wall and could have very easily, like, filled him full of lead, but somehow didn't and hit his handcuffs. It didn't make any sense. Anyway, another example would be a scene where an object is pulled from a dead body, and both the object and the person's hand are clean coming out of this dead body. I'm like, oh man, they should be like a bloody, sticky, something kind of mess. And then on top of that, he hands the object to someone else and tells them, clean it up for analysis. I'm like, clean it up? If those words are in the script, why is that not looking messy? I mean, I was really... So, and those are just kind of like two really kind of glaring things to me, but there were other smaller examples throughout that. I was just like one time where a car gets flipped in an explosion, and I was like, oh, okay, they must have jumped out right before the grenade hit that car. since because it's a roofless car, and I was like, and I didn't see them in it, and so they okay, they dodged, they got out at the last second. But then you cut into the next scene, and they're crawling out of the wreckage of this car. I'm like, they weren't in the car. They weren't in the car. They didn't even put like dummies in there. It was a CG thing. Why? I mean, I guess I could take a look again and see if maybe I missed something. But it was just little things throughout this movie that I'm like, this doesn't make sense. They're like they need somebody with attention to detail on this stuff. Let's see, the core conceptual and story ingredients are there in the script for a cool Matrix-like movie, you know. But what's missing, most significantly from making it kind of like scratch that Matrix movie itch, is things that are outside of the script. The first one is in the realm of casting and performances. Now, I like Mark Wahlberg, but he's not an actor, to my mind, that's known for playing vulnerable characters or fish-out-of-water characters. If he is, it's going to be a more like wisecracking fish out of water, not the vulnerable, kind of like John Crichton or like the what's the trucker's name in that's played by Kurt Russell? I just think of him as Kurt Russell in Big Trouble in Little China, or so many other movies, or The Matrix for that matter, where Neo for much of the time is like, I sense, I think likewise we don't think of Keanu Reeves as this really versatile, emotive, varied actor, but I do think that he played those fish out of water moments with vulnerability in the first Matrix movie, where he's being bewildered and not knowing what's going on and stuff, and it wasn't coming across as authentically to me with Mark Wahlberg. I would have preferred actually them swapping the casting with him and the actor that played his past life self. There's several flashbacks to the life that he was living before this one, and that character is played by the main actor in the Maze Runner movies, and I was like, I think he would be able to portray that vulnerability to me more successfully than Mark Wahlberg was, and so I kind of wish they would have swapped the casting there. But anyway, also the female support character, it felt like the actress was just given a character bio that said cool, mysterious, and a little bit sexy, because I felt like that's what I was getting from that character and in that performance. So I don't know. I would be very ready to believe that there's very little on the written page about that character. I mean, it was not a character like Trinity who was conflicted inside about how she felt about Neo and whether or not he was the one and stuff like that. There's some inner conflict going on with Trinity, and again, the Matrix is not known for these really deep, complex, layered characters. They're very simple, but Trinity, even in that first movie, had some complexity to her, and I just wasn't getting anything except for what I was seeing on the surface level of her lines being delivered in a kind of a cool and mysterious way, and it was very, very unusual. So the personalities just in general are lacking here, and I suspect that has a lot to do with the script, but I mean, I think actors can also bring subtext if the director will allow them, and I just didn't see that really happening. It's not that I felt the performances were bad, there's just nothing in them that I found interesting. As far as the stunts and visuals go, this is the real area where this movie, I think, failed to scratch the Matrix itch. The cast and the acting and the performances, that's more of just missing the mark in terms of what I want in a movie. I want to engage with characters that are decently motivated and have some personality aspects that I can relate to, either in myself or people that I know or something like that. But if you're going to try and like riff on the Matrix, I think half at least of what the Matrix was its visuals, its stylized presentation, not just in action scenes with the slow motion and the kung fu martial arts and stuff, but in normal scenes with people walking down hallways. There was a cinematic style to it, in addition to their clothing being stylized. There was just a visual look to that movie and how they used the camera, and none of that was really present here. Certainly you could compare it and say, well, compared to those movies, the Matrix movies, it was pretty, solid, had a lot of cool things going on. Well, I still wouldn't say that it's as visually striking as the first Matrix movie. And also, the first Matrix movie came out in 1999. So a lot has happened in filmmaking since then. And this movie is not to an audience today what the Matrix was to an audience in 1999, and so they're evoking, maybe it's unfair that I'm comparing it to the Matrix so much, but it seems to be unashamed of how much it is taking inspiration from the Matrix. And so I think it's just natural that an audience member is going to be thinking about the Matrix and comparing it to the Matrix. And so the CG stunts and the cars, which is usually vehicles, with CG exploding vehicles and stuff like that, have just that off look to the lighting where they just don't quite feel like they fit in the scene the way that they should. Other things just don't look quite up to what I would expect from a theatrical Mark Wahlberg sci-fi action movie, so disappointed in the CG. The fight choreography is also not really stylized or interesting. I'm just I'm a little bit puzzled. If they're evoking the Matrix, the most important parts of the recipe for doing that just were not present in this movie, and chiefly among those, I would say, was the visuals that fell short for me. Okay, so if I have no idea what your tastes are in. Oh wait, no, I'm not doing that yet. Relevance. Moral, philosophical, spiritual significance, any of that kind of stuff that might trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation. Okay, well, there's a big one in this. Reincarnation is at the core of this story. It's all over the place in this story. However, it's very clearly said in one scene that it's not like the reincarnation rules of any particular world religion. And the movie also doesn't imply that any particular world philosophy is true or false. It doesn't look like despite its comparisons to the Matrix, it doesn't look like it's really trying to be philosophical. It's more like it's just taking this idea of, oh yeah, what if that was a thing that people really did, come back and live multiple lives and stuff. Let's treat that as a fantasy concept, is for the most part how it feels. Similar to like immortality in the Highlander series. In fact, that's a lot of what it feels like, because these guys remember their past lives, and so for them, even though they've been changing bodies, they've been living for hundreds, thousands, who knows how many years. And so it feels more like a fantasy concept than something that they're really kind of wanting you to buy into as a philosophy. But in the final voiceover, Wahlberg's character describes how life is about kind of doing the best you can in each life, even though you're going to screw up and, mess up, make a lot of mistakes in your life. But, doing what you can, the idea of like leaving humanity better than they found it is mentioned earlier in the movie. And that, I think, is kind of the sentiment in this closing statement as well. And the character is kind of recognizing in this voiceover that it all adds up to being part of something bigger than yourself. And that's kind of like enough in the character's mind. That's what life is about doing the best you can, leaving the world better than you found it, and all of that is going to add up to being a part of something bigger than yourself. The desire to be part of something bigger than ourselves is a good one. We as believers in Christ have been adopted into God's family and are part of His kingdom and what He's planning to do for all of eternity. That work, that purpose, all begins now. So having our purpose grounded in this much larger objective reality, namely God Himself, is that's a big deal. And so that it's a good thing to want to, even apart from that, be a part of something bigger than ourselves, outside of ourselves, because there's humility in that. But I think the question that's worth asking after this movie is, what is that thing? Because in this movie, it's just the sum of what we all as humans cumulatively do. That doesn't provide a basis for objective moral values or virtues that we ought to aspire to. And cumulatively, we still screw up this life as a human race, and we screw up this world that we have. And so this seems to be expressing a desire in the end here for objective purpose that is more than we can create for ourselves. So I think there is a springboard here, whether as Christians talking to non-believers or Christians just reflecting on our own. When's the last time we asked ourselves as believers, what is my purpose? What has God made me for? What has He made all of us for? And what is the particular way that I can be working out that purpose in my life? What is that thing, that cause, that purpose that I've been brought into as a believer that is certainly bigger than me? And then, as we're having conversations non-believers, or again, as we're asking ourselves, because we can have some distorted views that creep their way into our minds. We can ask: is the highest and greatest thing that I'm living for really the highest and greatest thing? Is that really the best thing that I could and should be living for? And then how are my daily choices serving that purpose? So I think there is a springboard there, but as is the case, as I've said many times, that's only likely to happen if you enjoy the movie. If you're bored with the movie, as I was, and unengaged, uninvested in the resolution of the plot and just the characters and all that kind of stuff, then you're unlikely to be moved in a way that will lead you to think about some of these deeper issues of life. Now, I have no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, skip this one, man. It's got a pretty neat-looking trailer, but the action is disappointing, as well as the characters and the scene logic. Nothing to see here, nothing to see. Move along. This one is rated PG-13 for sequences of strong violence, some bloody images, strong language, and brief drug use. And those are all my thoughts for now on Infinite. I would love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. For more info about the benefits of becoming an insider, go to patreon.com/SpiritBladeProductions. Then I hope you'll join us soon over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.